So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up a web browser, and you're going to go to obsidian.md. Whatever OS you're on, you're going to download the version for that one. I'm going to click this. Once that's downloaded, you can click open. I'm on a Mac, so I just drag it into the applications folder. I am now just going to go and open up Obsidian, where we're going to see a screen that asks you to either open up an existing vault or create a new vault. Now, a vault is just a folder of files on your computer. That is one of the biggest benefits of using Obsidian. Your notes are all saved to your device. They're not stuck in some database in a cloud server somewhere where somebody else has ownership over your notes. If for some reason you don't have access to Obsidian, it crashes, Obsidian never goes away. Those notes are just plain text files on your computer, and you can access them from any app that supports plain text, which, by the way, is a lot. So for this Obsidian for Beginners course that I'm putting together, we're going to be creating a brand new vault. I'm going to hit create, and I'm going to call this Obsidian for Beginners. We're going to browse, and we're going to save this on our desktop. So we're going to create that. Here we are. We're going to make this big. We now have a brand new vault that we can work with. And I just wanted to show you, let's just move this out of the way. As you can see, this is just a folder on the desktop. And it has this like welcome note. And actually, if we open this up, we can see inside that very file, welcome. And I can even demonstrate showing, I can open this up. I'll open it up with my code editor that I use for my software development. We've got this exact note inside of a different app. We're going to close out of that. I'm going to go back, and we're just going to focus on Obsidian now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename this file because I don't need this file. We're going to rename this, and I want this this note that I'm going to be creating, I want this to be your first note as well. It is going to be a cheat sheet for the formatting syntax that Obsidian uses, which is called Markdown. We're going to call this Markdown Cheatsheet. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of the existing text. Even though I am a software developer and I use Markdown quite often in that role, I sometimes forget the syntax around Markdown. So I created a Markdown cheat sheet inside of my personal vault, and it has been a big help. Whenever I needed to remember how to do a certain thing, I could just open this cheat sheet up, or I can just have it open all the time. We're going to start with how to make headings in your notes. So headings are pretty simple. You just do a hash symbol followed by a space, and then you've got your heading 1, which is the biggest heading size that you can have. I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to do 2 hash symbols followed by the text. And that's for your heading 2, which is a little bit smaller. And then, as you can see, every time we add another hash, we get a level smaller. It's easy to know what the heading size is based on the number of hashes that you put in front of it. So those are the different headings that we can do. The other text formatting that is often used is things like bolding your text or putting it into italics. To bold your text, you just do 2 asterisks, and then you type your text, and then you close it with asterisks. So everything that's going to be in between those 2 asterisks is going to be bolded. To do an italic, you just do 1 asterisk, and then the text in between those 2 single asterisks. So now you've got bold and italic. Another thing that you might use often in notes is bullet lists. So to do a bullet, you just do a dash and a space, and now you have a bullet. And they work just like a regular bullet list. I can have a nested item underneath just by hitting tab. And then I can hit return twice, and that gets me back out to this other level. So that's bullet lists. Maybe you want a numbered list for something. You just do the number 1, period, space, number 1. And then as you hit enter, it will give you the next numbers. Another big thing that you're probably going to be using inside of Obsidian is backlinks. Now, I'm going to go a little bit more over backlinks a little later in the video, but I just want to show how to do it here to have it included in your Markdown cheat sheet. So to create a link to another note, which is called a backlink, you just do 2 of these square brackets, and it'll come up with a menu and show you all of the notes that are in your vault, so you can search for those notes. You don't have to remember the exact title for the note. We only have one note in our vault so far, this Markdown cheat sheet. It seems kind of silly to link to itself, so we're going to just come up with a new note. We'll just call this my first note for now. Now, it's saying no match found. That note doesn't exist. We can still create a backlink to a note that doesn't exist yet, and then we can create it later. So if there's something that you're thinking about and you want to create a note about it in the future, but you still want to be working in the current note, you can create that backlink and come back to it later. Now, let's say you want to link to something outside of Obsidian. You can do that by doing a single bracket, and you can have the text for your link. And then you follow that up with some parentheses and you put in the URL to whatever it is that you're linking to. So we'll just link to my website. And then as we click on that, that'll then open up that website inside the browser. You can highlight text by just doing 2 equal signs and then closing whatever you want highlighted with those 2 equal signs. If you want to do a strike through, you can do these kind of like, I actually don't know what they're called, these little squiggly hyphen things. You can find the key for it next to the 1 on your keyboard, and you can use that to do strike through text. Another cool thing you can do is you can create checkboxes for if maybe you're managing a task list of some sort inside of Obsidian, you can create checklists. So to do that, you just do the dash, space, and then you do the brackets with a space in between them, and then a space afterwards, and that will give you a checkbox. And when you're ready to check something off, you can just click on that checkbox. And what it does behind the scenes is it just puts a little X inside of those brackets where that space was. So that's how you can do checkboxes. These are really the main things that you need in order to get started with Markdown. There's other advanced things you could do. You can do tables. You can do what's called callouts, which is creating like colored boxes that you can kind of separate some content out. We'll go over those in future modules in this course. For now, I actually want to take some time to talk about what this course is going to be. What's the roadmap of what you can expect from this course? To do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a special note type called a canvas. Now, this is also something that we'll be talking about in a future module in the course. Right now, I'm just going to use it to kind of map out a few of the modules that are coming up in this course. So I'm going to say Obsidian for Beginners Roadmap for the title. And I'm just going to drag this card up, and I'm going to use that heading 1 to say Part 1. And this card inside of this canvas acts as just a note. You can put the same kind of markdown syntax inside of it. So this part 1 that we're going through right now, we covered how to install Obsidian, and then covered Markdown basics. I'm going to nest underneath a link to that Markdown cheat sheet that we just created. And then the next thing that we're going to go over is backlinks. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. I'll go ahead and just give you the little bit of what's coming next, just to kind of fill this roadmap out. I'm going to create another card. I'm going to put part two. Part two, I'm going to be going over the settings. So things like editor settings, the core plugins that you have. Obsidian has this nice plugin system. It has some core plugins that you can utilize, and then it also has community plugins. I will, of course, get to that in future modules in the course. For now, we'll talk about the core plugins in this next module. There's also different themes, different things that you can do to change the appearance of Obsidian. What's amazing about Obsidian is how customizable and flexible it is. This is truly a tool that you can make your own. However you want it to be structured, organized, you can do it. And that's what's so amazing about it. Now, because of this high customizability and flexibility, it does give it a kind of a high learning curve, which is why I'm doing this course. I want you to understand the basics of this app so that you can then take this and create whatever tool that you need. If you want it to be a place where you put research for things, you could do that. If you want it to be a task management type of system, you can build that inside of here. So that's what we'll be going over in the next module. Now let's get back to what's in this module. I did want to mention too that I am going to be uploading this vault that I am working on right now. Because it's just a folder of plain text files, I can easily share this. Wherever we are in the course, I'll be uploading these in each stage as we build this vault out. So if you want to be able to follow along, you can just download the vault as it is in whatever one that we're working on. You can have that. Now, you'll be able to find the different stages of this vault on my website. I'll be including a link to that in the description down below. All right, so let's get back to this module, which I'm going to be talking about the links between notes. So this is a very powerful feature that Obsidian has, and it's really what Obsidian is built around, is this idea that you can link your notes together. So let's go back to that Markdown cheat sheet real fast. And remember how we created a backlink to a note that didn't exist yet. So what we can do is we can actually click on this backlink, and that now creates that note for us that didn't exist before. As you can see, it's over on the left in the sidebar there. So now we have this note. We're going to just say, hi, I'm the first note ever in this vault, which isn't true. The Markdown cheat sheet was, but that's okay. We'll make it feel good. So now we have a note, and we have another note that's linking to it. You've probably noticed that we have this graph view over to the side. This is one of the ways that we can see the connections that we have between our notes. As you can see, Markdown cheat sheet is connected to this note, my first note. There are a couple of other ways that we can see what is connected to a note. You can click on these three dots on a note, and you can then say backlinks in document. That will bring up this footer at the bottom of the note, and as you can see, the Markdown cheat sheet has a link to this note. We have two different sections that are here. We have linked mentions and unlinked mentions. Linked mentions are, there's a direct link. There's an actual backlink from that file to this file. So Markdown cheat sheet has this actual link in it. Unlinked mentions is when you may have the text of the title of this note in something, but you haven't explicitly created a backlink for that. So let me demonstrate how that works. I'm going to go ahead and create a new note. Another way to create a new note, so far I've just used the existing note that was there or created one with a backlink. If you want to create a brand new note that doesn't exist, doesn't have any backlinks, you can hit this new note button over in the sidebar. So we're going to click that, and we're just going to call this another note for the moment. And then I'm going to type in my first note. As you can see, I haven't created it as a backlink, it's just text. Now I'm going to go back to my first note. I'm going to click on unlinked mentions. We can now see that there is a note that is mentioning this note. An actual backlink hasn't been created yet. What's really nice is that you can hover over this and it gives you this little link button. When you click link, it is now created a link to this note from that other note. So I go back to another note, we can see it's created an actual link. So now these two notes are linked. We can see those connections being built in this graph. Graph is something that I'm going to go over also in a future module, so don't worry too much about it right now, but it is a nice kind of visual way of seeing the connections starting to build between your notes. Another way that you can see backlinks is by clicking on this panel over here on the right, or this icon that opens up this panel. As you can see, we've got no linked notes to this another note, but we can also see links that are going out from this note. You see, we've got a link out to my first note from this note. But as links accumulate, we can see them here. In fact, if I go over to my first note, we can see those same linked mentions over on this panel as we do in that backlinks in document that I set up. So that's the basics of what you need to know when it comes to backlinks. Now, how would you go about using backlinks? What is their purpose? What are they for, really? So let's do a hypothetical note here. Let's say that I am creating notes around productivity lessons from Harry Potter. So I've got this note, and I'll type in a few things. It's Dumbledore has a device called a pensieve, which allows him to store his excess thoughts. And then we could say something like Obsidian is like a pensieve in that it helps me store my excess thoughts. And I'm going to say, I'm going to make this an italicized word to emphasize it. So we've got this note, and maybe as we're writing out this note, we think, oh, there are other things that this reminds me of. I'm going to create a note to something like productivity lessons from Star Trek. Maybe I want these things to be related because they're productivity lessons that are coming from pop culture things. So create a link to this new one. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, create this new document. I'm going to say the enterprise computer stores tons of information for the crew to utilize. I'm going to say the internet is a lot like the enterprise computer in that it gives us access to tons of information. And then maybe I want to make sure that I link back to the productivity lessons from Harry Potter. So now these two are linking to each other because they're related notes. So you can use links to relate notes to each other. What's great is that maybe there's something, maybe I'm going back here, maybe I'm working on something here and I have a cool thought about something else. Oh, let's say there's a few spells in Harry Potter that are like, oh, maybe there's some real world applications that I can think of with the spells from Harry Potter. So there's the ridiculous one, which is the one that you use to get rid of a boggart, which is something that takes the form of your greatest fear, and then you use that spell to turn it into something humorous. Well, maybe there's a thought of like, how can you actually utilize that kind of idea in real life? I can create a note from this one that I can then go back and kind of fill those things in later. I'm gonna give this a heading of spells in real life. can make this bullet list as well. And there's also Expecto Patronum. The spell that Expecto Patronum does is it gets rid of a creature called a Dementor, which feeds on bad memories, difficult things in a person's life. And so maybe you can utilize that in real life because the way that they counteract uh, the Dementor is by thinking of like the happiest moment in your life. So these are different ideas that I can then link off and create separate notes for, and it'll all be tied together. And then it will also link in with this productivity lessons from Star Trek through this chain. And maybe there ends up being connections there as well. And you start to grow this kind of graph of knowledge here, and you start to have thoughts collide and different ideas mesh together. That's what's really awesome about Obsidian is that it allows those kinds of things to grow. And that's exactly what the pensieve is in Harry Potter. It was a place where Dumbledore could store his thoughts and then he could see the connections between things. So that's really the core of what you need to know for getting started with Obsidian. And I'm going to caution people right now, if you're anything like me, you're immediately going to want to start organizing these notes in a way, folders, that sort of thing, because that's what we've been conditioned to do. We always organize things into folders, but I'm actually going to suggest that you not worry about structure at this point. This tool, like I said, is super customizable and it can grow with you. So allow that structure, whatever structure you end up with, let it grow organically. Let it evolve as you create new notes, as you create connections between notes. The nice thing is that with this backlinks, you can organize your notes through links. And I don't have to worry about where something is stored. I can just create links between ideas. Just start going in, start creating new notes, start creating connections between ideas, and that structure will evolve on its own over time. Thank you so much for joining me for this first of many videos on Obsidian in this Obsidian for Beginners series. Make sure you don't miss any of the videos by subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.